I just wanted to kind of find out from you guys how you're working, how you work in your music with this stuff. So we see how some of it has, see how some of it kind of looks when we start putting things together. But I was especially interested, really for many of you, what were your first experiences like with Reaktor? Because I think it can be quite intimidating to look at all this stuff and listen to engineers tell us how to use it. How did you manage to kind of get started, and can you kind of remember those first moments for any of you?
Well, I guess I discovered Reaktor initially because I worked for a competing company, and in doing research for other products that fulfilled a similar function, I discovered Reaktor and fell in love with it, and ended up using it a lot in my own music making. And I guess in a sort of general sense, Reaktor has always been a tool for solving problems. The perfect example, I haven't built that many instruments over the years from scratch, I would say. But a perfect example of one that I did build was an ensemble that's on the user library called Deadbeats, and it's just a 808 style step sequencing drum machine. And the reason that I built it was because in the early versions of Ableton, you couldn't host VST instruments, and I wanted to have a step sequencer while I was playing live. So I used the Reaktor Effects VST, which you could get clocked to and everything, and built this step sequencing instrument for playing live with. And I mean, I think that's a fairly good example, and I think it's a fairly good synopsis of my relationship with Reaktors. It's always been, if I reach a technical or creative wall when composing or when putting things together, it's tended to be the first tool that I've gone to solve that problem. And I think that's something for people who are just getting started with the program as well, that there's really nothing there. I think there can be a fear and sort of like a stigma attached to going in and ripping out pieces of other people's things and putting them together and being like, well, it's not really mine. I should really go and build my own LFO. But why do you want to build your own LFO when there's 50 other great ones there? And I think thinking about things at this very basic level of what it is that you or what problem you're trying to solve is at the very least for me, has been an effective way of dealing with it.
And so you mean actually going to the user library and finding stuff that other people have built, or going to the factory library and finding stuff?
Either way, I think there's anybody who's starting out or anybody who's been even using it for a long, I go to the user library at least every couple of months just to go and see what because people are doing completely insane stuff always, and there's always something inspiring to steal. Picasso, right?
Well, they're giving it away, right? This is a little bit like, if you haven't hung out in the user library, it's like walking into a music store where everything is free.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not intentionally, not just because you have a nice trench coat on or something.
Yeah.
And you were also happy to share your stuff in the user library. So you obviously happy that other people go and take your stuff.
Well, yeah? Absolutely. It made sense to me. It made sense to me that I was like, well, if I'm having this problem, there's other people who are playing live with Ableton, and this is a solution I was happy to share it with other people, so that other people could use it as well. Yeah.
How about you, Tim? Another. Now, some of your stuff is not free. We have to pay. We should pay for some of it too.
Well, it's always welcome. Well, yes. I started 15 years ago now, something like that. Actually, my route into Reaktor was first through Vadim's creation before he joined Native Instruments, Sync Modular. And at the time, I was I was well into this whole space race that was going on, which is the quest for the most ridiculous sound in this sort of like post IDM, or like the sort of the heyday stroke end of IDM when it was last cool, and so everybody was trying to just find. Yes, I'd spend hours like trawling the internet for these weird plugins and so on. And so when I discovered Sync Modular, I just started messing around. Very much taking this. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I suppose I did. Yeah, I did kind of try and think ahead of like, I want something that sort of does this. Like, how would that work? And so I'd probably do a lot. Like at the time, I ought to sleep. I was actually kind of working out like how delay lines might work, or how you might want to make something with mash up a break or something. So I just sort of like, I dipped my toe in, and then quickly my foot, and then I was up to my knee, and then I sort of fell in, and I was like diving deep quite quickly. I think I guess I was lucky. I took to this like deep patching, making monsters thing quite readily, and it just sort of went from one thing to another. Really, I started off, making little sound toys. It didn't really work and completely inefficient with CPU, like aliasing all over the place. To just gradually working out how to build things better, and then like sort of 2 or 3 years after I first started learning Reaktor, I made my first kind of like all-in-one instrument, and since then I never really looked back. And the way I work with Reaktor now is really, it's a sort of single development project. So I've made this thing which I call the Flow Machine, which is an instrument for improvising electronic music. I mean, that was one of the things that was really clear I wanted to do, was to actually improvise, and not just improvising by kind of bringing pre-prepared loops in and out, but literally like playing stuff from scratch. And so the way I've pretty much been working on one Reaktor ensemble, for my entire.
You're going to show this to us in a moment.
Yes,
too.
I will.
Yeah,
I will. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
But this has been, but it really did start. It sounds like it really did start for you with some trial and error. So if people feel afraid at all, or so we've already heard it's okay to go and kind of rip things out of the user library and pull things apart and try to reuse components. It's okay at first that maybe your patch is not working beautifully and it's eating CPU for reasons you don't know, or things like that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's like learning a language, or it's like anything. You just got to throw yourself in, and. I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is a bit contentious, but I think actually everybody is a patcher at heart. It's just like, what type of patcher are you? How do you engage with sticking stuff together? And for some people, using other people's creations and wiring them together in a very basic way, and then just getting lost very quickly in improvising and jamming and so on. That is patching. That is an approach to this modular way of creating sound, but then some people will get like Vadim's mentality, which is just like dig right down to the metal, and there's all sorts of things in between. So I mean, don't be afraid. Throw yourself in, and you'll kind of find you'll find out something about how you work with stuff in the process.
Well, if even Vadim is doing some of this through trial and error and making mistakes, then it's definitely okay for all of us. Yeah. Yeah. What? No? Yeah, he was lying. But let's believe his lie. But it does kind of get. But it does, at the same time, it does get back to that question earlier about how do you kind of quantify the quality of hardware versus software. I mean, there's not really wrong answers here, actually. If you make a mistake and it's making sound, it's really down to whether you then like the sound that you've just made, I would say, right? So it's okay. So we've established this trial and error for all of us, or at least for me and for some of us. Well, so we're going to take a look at Tim's kind of performance setup, but I'm curious for the other two of you, what's your performance rate like these days? And when you're playing with Reaktor, are you kind of going with one ensemble? Is it one sort of particular tool and you use that for the whole performance? When I've heard you play, it sounded like lots and lots of Razor. Yeah.
Yeah, when I play live or when I make music, I always stick to one source somehow, because otherwise I get lost because there's too much options. So, I mean, with Reaktor, it's very hard to limit options, obviously. So my idea is, okay, one record or one live set is basically of one source, and right now it's Razor mainly, doing all sounds from it. and also because I still like it a lot, and it always yeah. I just because I spent so much time developing it, I still feel that I haven't harvested much from it for my music making. So that's right now I'm doing this.
What about you, Scott? Is Deadbeat still happening?
No, I don't use it anymore
Deadbeats.
because obviously you can do step sequences and stuff in Ableton. But I mean, it still Reaktor still factors highly, but less as a sound generator for me, and usually more in terms of the effects. There's always like 2 or 3 of the effect sends that are Reaktor patches that are constantly evolving chains of delays, reverbs, lots of granular stuff that that really that changes all the time, and it's always being modified, and that's where it's always ever present in the live rig.
Cool. Well, before we move on, any other questions from inside the audience? Yeah.
The regular hardware we have now in MIDI controllers, just the boxes, are not optimum for controlling such thing that would be a little bit like a modular synthesizer. Is there any research for a new generation hardware to try and deal with all the possibility and the flexibility of such softwares?
You mean hardware to actually control the patching, or just more interesting hardware controllers to interface with the patches?
I mean, the regular hardware controllers are basically pads and knobs, but it doesn't really take into account this cable thing. So I don't know if there's something that somebody are thinking about the next generation of hardware, taking that into account.
I guess the question is whether there's sort of hardware. I mean, there's certainly lots of interesting hardware controllers beyond just pads and buttons for playing the instruments that you create and things like the Raleigh Seaboard and so on. But and I've seen experiments with people creating interfaces where you can connect physical cables that control what's happening on the screen, or kind of using the Eurorack like we saw. But anything else to add to those?
I think one of the biggest issues with dealing with software modulars as opposed to dealing with a fixed software instrument is with a software instrument, it's got a fixed set of controls all the time, and you pop it up and you map it to your MIDI controls, and then you're done. But a modular environment like Reaktor is changing all the time. But if I'm not mistaken, the new generation of the native keyboards will auto map the parameters for Reaktor patches as well. Or am I wrong? Is that correct? Or
Yeah, there's some ways of connecting those, which I think we're going to see a little bit in the next demo as well. So there are ways around it. I mean, I suppose one thing I would say, just my own opinion here, is there's some advantages to being able to work with a mouse, and so that even though it's nice to have physical cables, at the same time, the nice thing about, especially when you come from hardware back to software, it's nice to never run out of cables. It's nice to be able to create modules out of thin air. And all of those things are certainly very nice to do on screen, and have gotten, it's gotten more efficient and gotten easier to see what you're doing. So long as you then find kind of interesting ways, I guess, of connecting instruments to things later, which I think we'll look at a bit. One question is, have artists been, and I'm also depending on whoever's sending us messages from the back of the room to tell us when it's time to move on, which I suspect is soon, but have you been using blocks yet? Has anybody been using blocks?
Yeah, I had a quick block up, block out, blocking.
Blocking.
Yeah, actually, a few weeks before they were released, I was on my way back from Berlin to London, and I mean, I guess it's just like the ultimate sort of hipster thing to do, to like try and make something musical on a plane. So I did, but yeah, it was. It's really, really great fun. I think what I haven't gone into the Eurorack wormhole vortex yet. I think I have a feeling I'm just about on the cusp. But then there's also blocks. But the thing that I really enjoyed about blocks is you can, I made a sort of self-generating composition that just sort of played itself and muted things in and out. I mean, it sounded pretty kind of like a haunting minimal thing, which I think is, that's probably fairly like in the center of what you might do first with a blocks patch. But yeah, it's very a very kind of I felt very unimpeded in getting my ideas into something that kind of lived on its own. Wow.
Any other blocks? You guys, you're not using blocks yet. No.
Sabbatical.
Sabbatical. Not even on the beach. It's lovely. Like you have some mussels, you know, or something, and then some blocks. But how about Scott?
I mean, I was interested when it came out to the begin with because immediately saw that. I was like, oh, okay, well, let's see what happens when we start pumping this into the modular, and did a few experiments with some friends, with Colin the Mole, about just to see how stable the clock was and how it was interfacing. So I guess we did some clock blocking or something. I don't know, but sorry.
I love that this was met with huge applause on stage, but you can't hear it probably on the internet is just dead silence.
Super nerdy joke. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Well, let's have a big round of applause though for our artist panel. It's such a pleasure to talk to you guys.